the Atman, which is the ultimate self, exists in everything, including animals, including the teeniest insect, including plants.
And so how do you interact with that?
You don't necessarily have to, there are forms of life that you cannot communicate with, but they are there.
And so
they are manifestations of the same one. The basic cosmology is there is no ex nihilo creation, that where the creator is separate from the created and makes it out of nothing. So since the starting presumption is that the one is without a second, there is no other, so there is no dualism with the Antichrist kind of concept, and there is no dualism between God and Word.
Oh, interesting.
Okay. So if there can't be any other, because wherever there is another, then the logic comes in to argue that something or other is faith.
Yes.
So if there is no other, then what is the world? What is the raw material made of?
And also, where do I end and you begin in a sense?
So, but first the world. So the answer to that is that the word is God's own manifestation of Himself is a word. But it's like if you have a infinitesimal part of something. The infinitesimal part, when you take out an infinitesimal part, what is left is still unchanged.
Interesting. So it's almost a mathematical concept.
Yes.
Like the limit.
So that is correct. So if you take a number, x, and you subtract delta out of it, you still have x. It has infinitesimal by definition is so trivial in comparison that it leaves the entity unchanged. So you have the unchanged God, that is the transcendent God. And an infinitesimal part has become everything. Now this is very interesting. So this means that it is transcendent and also immanent. Everything is God, and yet God is unchanged.
Oh, that's fascinating.
It is. So it is not pantheism, because pantheism doesn't have a transcendent God. And it's not monotheism, because monotheism has only a transcendent God.
And it is also premised on the idea of creation.
Creation.
Not, in a sense, there's a fundamental tension between the eternal God and a God that can create.
Right.
Because if a God is constant and unchanging in properties,
right,
and also infinite,
right,
it's challenging to have the notion of kind of an emergent creation.
That is correct. So this is a transcendent and immanent one. So the world is therefore sacred, because everything is basically God's form.
So how does that work, though? From the standpoint of a Western person, in my case a Jewish person, the idea that human beings are sacred is very intrinsic to Judaism. But the idea that we are also almost literally united with God would seem overwhelming. It would seem...
It would. So here's an idea. So here's the thing. Suppose Joshua is acting in a play. And in that play you have to perform the role of, Mr. X. So it's Joshua performing X.
Yes.
Correct? Now, when you are performing X, are you X or are you Joshua?
Oh, interesting. So where does your identity end when you're playing a specific role?
Right. So I would say, let's say you write it as Joshua as X. So the character on the stage is Joshua as X. Correct? Joshua as performing X. You cannot say that this is X, because that would mean that X is real by itself. It's really Joshua as X. It's not X.
It's a hybrid form.
It's a manifestation of Joshua transformed as X for role playing, and a temporary role. Because after you are done, you go home and you're Joshua again.
And so that's metaphorical for human beings.
God as man.
Well, then what's the purpose of human life?
Wait. But first let's look at it.
Yeah.
If it's Joshua as X,
yes,
right? Then when enacting X, the X does not know I'm Joshua. He's forgotten. The X doesn't know that he's Joshua.
Oh, interesting. You become so immersed.
You're so engrossed. You're so into the role that you think you are X, and you are crying when X is supposed to cry. You're laughing when X is supposed to laugh, and you really have forgotten that this is actually a role I'm playing, but it is not really who I am. Yeah.
That is such an interesting.
That is an amazing difference, a whole huge difference in perspective. So the liberation of the individual is when X begins to realize that I am Joshua as X. That's called liberation.
Oh, interesting.
And that, so he can keep playing the role of X, but he now plays it with a different attitude. He plays with a different attitude because he doesn't see himself limited as X. The limits of X are just, so he goes through sorrow, but that is X's sorrow. He goes through enjoyment, that is X's enjoyment. He knows that birth of X, when he came there in the morning and dressed up as X to play the role on the stage, was not really his birth, it was just a form he created. And the death of X, when the director says the game's over, we don't need X anymore, his road is over, it's not that I'm over. That particular road is over. So this way, Joshua as X can then later on become Joshua as Y, and he play another role, somebody else's role, right?
And so there's, well, the interesting idea in the hyphenated form, there's a certain set of properties or principles to Joshua,
Right.
which can be manifested differently in the different roles that Joshua plays.
Exactly. Now, there's another interesting thing. Suppose there is this play with a husband and wife who are arguing and having fun, or two partners or two players. And suppose Joshua enacts both of them. The same Joshua is simultaneously performing multiple roles. Now, there are movies which have been done like that. Yeah? And there are some theater that has been done like that, where the same actor comes and performs and then goes away, quickly changes and goes and does something else. A lot of, and there's a style of theater in India where the guy, this profile, left profile is one character, the right profile is a different character. So when he's looking at the stage with one side, he's performing a role, and he suddenly switches very quickly and answers back. So he's having a dialogue between two characters performed by the same actor. One's a man, one's a woman, for example. One's a demon, one's a nice deity. So they're having a conversation. This is performed a lot. To make the point that multiple roles are being performed by the same actor.
So it's sort of, in a postmodern sense, it's the idea that we have multiple identities, multiple facets to our identities.
Yes.
And they can be made manifest at different points and in different ways.
Yes.
And also, I'm thinking, Amartya Sen talked a lot about it in terms of almost notions that we have spherical nodules of identity. And they come in such different forms. And so at different points, it's as though different spherical nodules are intersecting and interacting with those nodules of other people.
Right.
So that would be kind of, in a multiple sense, you can at once be Joshua as X, and Joshua as Y, and Joshua as Z.
And Joshua and X may be having a fight with Joshua as Y, but they're both Joshua.
Oh, so you can even have the internal tension.
Yes. So basically, once you get this simple idea or this complex idea of God performing Rajiv, and God as Joshua, and God as Kent, and God as Cleo, then you can expand it and say God as every single creature, from the tiniest insect, bird, dog, every being in the cosmos.
Well, why does it have to be a creature? Why can it not be God as a tree, or God as
a stone, God as an electron? So when we started the conversation, I said God becomes the cosmos, and that is literally what it is. So God is every single particle, and therefore in the Big Bang it is God who is manifesting through the Big Bang part of himself into space, matter, time. And therefore there is no conflict between creation and evolution in the Hindu system, because this whole evolution, scientific evolution, is a outgrowth of God being involuted in the space-time matter matrix. So since it is God as every electron, and God as every proton, and God as every combination, every molecule, every bird, every tree, so therefore God is immanent in every aspect of existence, making all the cosmos and all the nature sacred, for one thing, because it's God. God's one.